Namaste, friends, and welcome to the Taoist Dragon's Lair and something awesome. So, this is probably the most ghetto setup for using a webcam, like, ever. But pretty much what I did is I went into the webcam app onto my computer and then I used my software recording program to just record as that's happening. So technically, I'm not even recording webcam footage right now. This is just my software recording this app. Anyways, I was trying to think of the topic for this next vlog and what to talk about. And I decided to talk about nostalgia for one major reason, which is like last week I was just surfing the internet and I managed to rediscover Diablo. And Diablo was just like this huge part of me being a kid. Because I remember I was just like a little, and I'm going to tilt this up. I was little and I didn't understand video games. I didn't understand most things. So I kept on wanting to be a wizard. And, wizards are not the toughest characters. But I kept on wanting to be a wizard and running in, hitting things with my stick and staff. And I kept dying. And I was getting angry. I know all my brothers and stuff were trying to tell me, it's like, Garen, you can't play like that. I want to play it this way, I'm going to make it work. Of course, I never did make it work. I figured it was time for some redemption. I went online because I was playing Icewind Dale, which again is another old game. And I got Icewind Dale because I got Neverwinter, which is a game I got like a few years ago off the GameStop app, which is no longer up and running, so I couldn't get my games off it back. I had the original Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2 and all that stuff. Again, another big part of my childhood, but I was slightly better at those because I got to play them when I was older. I mean, I played them when I was younger too, and I didn't get anywhere. I kept on dying, like, after you leave the first town. But once I started to get older and understand the game a bit more, yeah, I was actually getting places. Unlike Diablo, because I only played that when I was too young to really understand it. But I was playing Icewind Dale, which is very similar to Baldur's Gate. It uses the same engine. It's just a little bit more combat focus instead of, exploration and role-playing focus. I got Neverwinter's Nights because I wanted to play an old school RPG and I was thinking about it off the GameStop app. Since the GameStop app wasn't working, I went to GOG, which is a great site. If anybody likes old video games, you should check it out because it's just got a lot of great games off it. Sorry for the screen shake, but so I went to GOG.com and I first tried to get Baldur's Gate off it, but they only have the enhanced edition because I don't know, like last year or something, Beamdog re-released Baldur's Gate. They like updated the engine, but it's got so many negative reviews because they babied it down to the point that it's hardly recognizable, so I didn't want to get that. But my choices, my options that were left was Icewind Dale and Neverwinter's Nights. I got Neverwinter's Nights because I was playing that a few years ago and I made a shapeshifter class. I didn't get too far in the game and I lost it, so I figured I would get it back, and I was playing a shifter class on that. But then I got Icewind Dale 2, so I could reconnect more to my roots as a, you know, back to when I played Baldur's Gate as a kid. And I guess that's really more of what set me onto the nostalgia thing. It's like I was playing that, thinking about Baldur's Gate, but then it's like, it'd be nice if I could actually play something that was from my actual childhood, like Diablo, and redeem myself once and for all. And this is where this already long story just gets even longer, because the search for Diablo was a task and a half. Blizzard no longer officially supports Diablo, but I was just looking up some ways to get Diablo. And the first way that I got Diablo, it wasn't really supported on my version of Windows, so I couldn't even play it. So I had to go back to that website and downloaded it another way, which even when I put on the patches, Diablo is so old and outdated, it wasn't running on my computer. So I was just going through these files and I was extracting files, trying to get the expansion to Hellfire, because that was just available as well. I was trying to get all the stuff onto it, and yeah, even with the patch, it wasn't working. So I had to go to a modding website. There's a website dedicated to an HD remastering of Diablo. And I managed to get the HD upgrade mod. So after all that effort and time, I managed to be able to play Diablo using the HD mod. So I can't play the true original game. And while the HD remake is mostly faithful to the original, they made it more modern, because there's a lot of gameplay mechanics in the original Diablo that are just outdated, and by many standards of, today's standards, they're just tedious, annoying, and just little things like that. And just for example, for those of you who aren't familiar with Diablo, it's all done with your mouse, and you just hover your cursor over places. And when you're looting things from fallen enemies, you just hover your mouse over where the item dropped, and you see its name pop up, and then you click on it. And Diablo 2 and beyond, and any Diablo clone, because Diablo is such a popular game that they made games exactly like it, pretty much. You have a button which will make the names pop up, without having to move your cursor over the item, which allows for easy looting, especially if little items like rings and stuff, where your cursor would literally have to be right on the pixel that it's at in order to pick it up. The original Diablo didn't have a button that highlighted all the loot. So if you killed an enemy and it dropped a ring amongst all the piles of demons and bones of all the people that you just killed, you had to take your cursor, dig it around, and hope that you found that ring. Especially if it dropped behind another item, you'd have to try to figure that mess out. It's you may not even realize at first that you have to pick up this item in order to get at the ring. But thankfully, this HD remastering mod makes it so there is a button that highlights loot. So there's just little, I guess, helper features like that. While it isn't true to the original game makes it that much more playable in this modern day and age. Because I love old games. I love more than old games. I love old stuff. My favorite shows Get Smart, which is a show from the 60s. I have a real fondness for this, older, like, shows, movies, whatever. I have a real fondness for older things. And I love old games, but there's a reason why a lot of the mechanics got replaced and changed as games grew. And there's also a reason why video games almost died out when they first were born, because, yeah, there's just a lot of annoying and tedious things about them. I wouldn't trade it in for the world. I take it for what it is, but it doesn't mean occasionally when I'm playing something like Castlevania, I don't want to throw my controller because of frustrating little things that the game does. I mean, part of it was technical limitations of that era, but it's also they were just designed that way, and they had certain methodologies that later did get replaced because, for one, they did grow old, but mostly it's just because they found ways to do it better. So even though I love the old games and their style, I'm not going to get too upset that in my HD remastering mod, there's just little features that weren't available in the original game that a lot of modern gamers have just sort of taken for granted. And even I have just found, like, okay, it's useful to have this button to highlight loot. Makes looting just that much easier and less tedious for the player, so you can get back to actually playing the game. It's just like a little side note. It shouldn't take too much time, and if it takes too much time and effort, it detracts from the game. Goodness, I have to be careful because if I don't move my mouse, my computer thinks, oh, this is a good time to go into screensaver mode and stop. And I don't know if that ends the recording, so gotta be careful about that. But yeah, so that's my story about my search for Diablo and stuff. Which is the entire reason why I decided to do this vlog on nostalgia. But yeah, it was just really cool and awesome to take a step back and into the past and relive a piece of my childhood, but I wasn't reliving it as much as I was expanding upon it, which is the reason why I really love to go back to things that I haven't seen or experienced in a while, especially the really drastic. I haven't seen this since I was a kid, and now I'm watching it as an adult, because now I have just so much more understanding and experience that I can add to what I take out of whatever it is. So, like, watching a movie, it's like, oh, now I get that, and this makes sense. It's like seeing the movie or playing the game with fresh eyes, even though it's got memories to it too, which is just a really neat and awesome experience that I love. For instance, going back to Diablo, and I made a wizard for redemption, but now I know what I'm doing. I'm no longer running in and hitting things with a stick. I'm standing back and I'm casting my spells like I'm supposed to. And oh my god, wizards are just so amazing. I mean, they are in every game, but especially in that old style of gaming. With RPGs, wizards were just one of the best classes to play, period. Because warriors and fighters, they're okay early on, but they don't increase in power as much as a wizard. And neither does a rogue, but a rogue does more than a fighter. Because you have your skills, you have like your disarming and stuff, which keeps things interesting, especially late level. And the thing is, a wizard, they start off the weakest because you don't have spells to be able to cast. But once you get spells, you can do pretty much anything. Like D&D rules with spells and stuff. There's pretty much a spell that does absolutely any mechanic in the game. It's like you can unlock doors, detect traps, and identify items. It's just you need the spells and you need the ability to cast them. Which in Diablo's system is you have mana. And mana does not recharge over time, unlike a lot of modern games. Unless you have items that makes it so it does regenerate, which are like kind of high value. It's not too high value, but it's pretty up there to have health regen and mana regen. Thankfully, as part of my mod, it makes it playing a wizard easier because you get a spell that turns life into mana. It's not overpowered because it has a cooldown period of a minute, and also the amount of mana that you get back is random. So you can cast this spell and get only 1 mana back. And then you're like, oh, well, that's pointless because that's not enough for like any spell. But I think that's what little kid me was getting at. It's like, I know that the wizard is going to be the best character, so I'm going to be the wizard. I just didn't have the know how to play a wizard. It's too young. And it wasn't just like Diablo. I remember playing Monopoly, and I landed on somebody's property. I was like, oh crap, I have to pay them. And my brothers are like, if they don't notice that you land on their property, you don't have to pay them. So my little kid brain and logic is like, I'm a dog, because that was the dog piece. It's like, so you wouldn't really notice a dog if it like ran onto your property. Is just like another one of the things. Wildlife, whatever. So it's like, you wouldn't notice a dog, I shouldn't have to pay. It's like, no, that's not it. And I got so mad, I like threw a temper tantrum. And to this day, I'm like kind of embarrassed with myself. It's like, oh my god, little me, I love you, but God, just, yeah. I don't want to say I'm dumb, but that was pretty stupid. I'm always seeking not only things from my childhood, but I do like that retro aesthetic. I really love retro-esque games. Games from the modern era that mimic that old era. I mean, some people expand upon those games, but most tend to just have like carbon paste copies. They just remake old classics and stuff to try to tug at the nostalgia strings. Which, I mean, I still play a lot of those because, for one, they tend to be cheap. I won't lie, but it's they're building off the stuff that did work, and they're still kind of fun. But I really do like this stuff that, even though it's in that old style, they expand upon it. And actually, this is like my biggest takeaway from Dark Souls when I was playing Bloodborne and Dark Souls and stuff like that, is it's really hard to describe, but my favorite part to those games is it's like a modern day NES game. And the sense that it's not in how it's like the graphics and stuff, it's all like modern day. But it's just like that feel and like the mechanics. It's more NES than these retro-esque games that legit make it 8-bit. It's like if that NES generation had lived on to this day and age and made a modern game. I'm not saying that Dark Souls is perfect or anything. No offense to you Dark Souls fans out there. It's a good game. And I'm not even saying that it would be the most perfect adaptation for a like modern NES. Not necessarily NES because, well, yeah, it reminds me more of the 8-bit stuff than the 16-bit. But that's for only one reason. That's because it's an RPG. And there wasn't a lot of like RPGs back in that time. I mean, that's when the stuff was starting to be developed. But that generation of gaming is mostly known for its platformers and stuff like that. So if it was a game, in that genre, it would fit more perfectly. Which is not to take away from what Dark Souls is, because it's still beautiful for that fact. And it's like something that you can't describe with words. You just play it and you sort of just feel that feeling. It's like really cool. And I can't necessarily say why I like retro stuff, and I just find it appealing. I mean, a lot of people find nostalgia appealing because it reminds them of their youth. So, it's like escape from the now into the past, which was familiar. But it's not that so much for me. Though I'll admit it's partially because of that. It's more like being able to see into a different world, because this is clearly not our world now, but it was the world back in the day. It's just interesting to see how things have changed, but I don't necessarily view it in that way. It's like going and viewing the world in a different lens, which is something I seek after. I'm always trying to view the world in all sorts of lenses and not be stuck with one viewpoint. I try to be open-minded in everything, but I love being able to see in multiple viewpoints. So I think that's why I really love revisiting things that isn't. It's like a combination of isn't and aren't. It's a new word. I coined it. Things that aren't from my particular past. Like the NES. I mean, I had a friend who had an NES, and so I got to play like Castlevania and stuff. But it's nothing that I really did. But I like to go back and see those. I love the movie Kung Fury, which is more of a throwback to the 80s. And even though I was a kid in the 90s, so there is like this overlap of the 80s and the 90s, like 80s, early 90s. It's not so much about that, because there isn't a lot of actual memories that I have. I'm trying to think of how to word this. It's not actually about being based off my childhood and actual memories. It's about stepping back. And even things like Get Smart. Get Smart was in the 60s. I definitely don't have anything to physically connect me to that. But I still really love watching them and just seeing the world from a whole different angle. So that's my take on nostalgia. And with that, I'm going to end this episode. I hope you enjoyed this bit of the Dragon's Treasure. Have a great day.